For more than a decade, the Cornelia Marie stood as the very soul of Deadliest Catch. To fans, it wasn't just a boat, it was a floating home, stage where lives, struggles, and triumphs played out in the unforgiving waters of the Bering Sea. At its heart was the tough but deeply loved Captain Phil Harris, a man whose entire existence seemed tied to the ocean. When Phil passed away, the vessel didn't lose its spirit immediately. His sons, Josh and Jake Harris, stepped forward, vowing to honor their father's memory and keep the Cornelia Marie alive. Viewers cheered for them, investing hope in an idea that the Harris legacy would continue. But everything changed in August 2022, out of nowhere. An old and forgotten court document surfaced online. At first glance, it seemed like nothing more than another dusty legal file. Yet as people dug deeper, the shocking truth unraveled. Josh Harris had been hiding a dark secret for 24 years. It wasn't a minor misstep or a forgivable mistake. It was a crime so deeply disturbing and unsettling that it rattled fans to their core. Within days, the fallout began. Discovery Channel erased every trace of the Cornelia Marie from its shows, as if the boat itself had vanished from existence. Streaming platforms quickly followed suit, pulling entire seasons almost overnight. The question echoing among fans became unavoidable. What exactly had Josh done? To understand the weight of this downfall, we have to go back to the beginning, the origins of the Cornelia Marie itself. The vessel was built in 1989 at Horton Boats in Bayou La Batre, Alabama, a shipbuilding town with salt water in its blood. Generations of craftsmen had honed their skills there, producing shrimp boats, crabbers, and sturdy fishing vessels that dotted the Gulf Coast. But the Cornelia Marie wasn't just another build. It was special. It represented the final, large-scale commercial project overseen by legendary shipbuilder Elmo Horton, a man still spoken of with reverence in Gulf Coast maritime circles. With its heavy steel frame, wide beam, and sleek, purposeful deck, the Cornelia Marie was designed to conquer the brutal conditions of the Bering Sea, measuring 128 feet from bow to stern and stretching 28 feet across, with a draft of more than 11 feet. It sat deep and steady in the water. Twin Cummins QSK-19M diesel engines, each delivering 750 horsepower, gave the boat an edge most competitors lacked. With speeds up to 14.5 knots, it could outrun storms and power through rough seas when every second mattered. Its 28,500-gallon fuel tanks and 3,000 gallons of fresh water capacity gave it endurance, allowing the crew to stay out for weeks at a time without returning to port. In an industry where time equals survival, that self-sufficiency gave the Cornelia Marie a serious competitive advantage. The investment was massive, $2.5 million. A fortune in 1989, but it paid off. The Cornelia Marie quickly earned a reputation not just for its muscle, but also for its efficiency, reliability, and unmatched ability to haul enormous loads of crab. Unlike other boats that carried lofty, poetic names, the Cornelia Marie bore something far more personal. Ralph Collins, the man who commissioned the vessel, named it after his wife, Cornelia Marie Collins. She wasn't a silent partner who stood on the sidelines. She worked alongside him, handling finances, logistics, and the endless behind-the-scenes struggles that kept the business afloat. Naming the boat after her was a tribute to partnership and respect. Even after their marriage ended, Cornelia remained a part owner, and the name never left the hull. Over time, that name would become famous worldwide. The Cornelia Marie was as bold visually as it was functionally. Its aquamarine hull, crisp white trim, and striking yellow banners made it impossible to miss. Whether tied up in Kodiak, weathering storms in Dutch Harbor, or powering through the icy swells of the Bering Sea, the boat stood out, instantly recognizable even from afar. Yet beneath the paint and branding, it was built for survival. It hunted king crab, opilio crab, salmon, and herring, each season bringing a new set of risks in some of the harshest waters on Earth, thanks to its massive fuel and water reserves. The Cornelia Marie could stay out longer than many of its rivals, fishing when others were forced to retreat. The early crew was a mix of veterans, hardened by years at sea, and green newcomers, chasing fortune, or running from their pasts. They all faced the same brutal reality: icy waves crashing over the bow without warning, freezing winds slicing through the rigging, and the constant danger of being swept overboard. Each shift was a gamble, where one mistake could mean death. Still, the Cornelia Marie persevered. In the deadly winter of 2005, when the fishing vessel, Big Valley, sank into the icy blackness, the Cornelia Marie was among the boats that rushed into the storm, desperately searching for survivors. Only one man was rescued alive, but the effort solidified the Cornelia Marie's reputation. Long before cameras captured its story, the boat had already become a legend among fishermen who risked everything at the edge of the world. By the 1990s and early 2000s, the Cornelia Marie had grown even stronger. A massive refit extended its length by 22 feet, boosting its crab capacity by 100,000 pounds. Now capable of hauling over 300,000 pounds in a single trip, it towered above much of the fleet. While other boats folded under financial pressure or struggled through lean seasons, the Cornelia Marie endured. Its strength, reliability, smart leadership set it apart, qualities that made it the perfect candidate when reality. TV producers went searching for stories on the Bering Sea. At the center of this rise was Phil Harris. He first joined the Cornelia Marie in the early 1990s, earning his place through grit and determination. And by 1998, he had taken the helm as captain. Phil was as tough as they came, chain-smoking, demanding, and fiercely protective of his crew. To him, the men who worked on the Cornelia Marie weren't just employees, they were family. He stood by them through storms, injuries, and sleepless nights. Always carrying the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, his path to captaincy was no easier than the waters he conquered. Growing up in Bothell, Washington, he learned fishing from his father at just 8 years old. By 17, he had dropped out of high school, chasing money and crab fishing after a friend returned home with over $100,000 from a single season. Phil's first attempts nearly broke him. He quit once, mocked by his captain, but came back determined to prove himself. By 19, he made $130,000 in one season. And by 21, he owned his first boat, the Golden Viking. It wasn't easy. He faced crushing debts, broken equipment, and a young captain's struggle for respect. But he endured, building a reputation as one of the sharpest and toughest skippers in the fleet. Phil wasn't perfect. His personal life was marred by 2 divorces and substance abuse struggles. But on the Cornelia Marie, he was unmatched. He shared profits fairly, refused to demand anything from his crew that he wouldn't do himself, and cared deeply about their well-being. Empty crab pots didn't just mean lost profit to him. They meant his crew could go home empty-handed, and that was unacceptable. When the Cornelia Marie was chosen as one of only 4 vessels to feature in Deadliest Catch Season 2, it was a turning point. Phil was hesitant about cameras invading his world, worried it might interfere with work or expose dangerous moments better left unseen. Yet the timing aligned perfectly with a major industry change: the introduction of individual fishing quotas, which replaced the chaotic derby-style races of the past. Only the strongest, most capable boats would survive. And the Cornelia Marie had proven itself worthy. Phil's decision to bring his sons, Josh and Jake, on board added a new dynamic. He didn't coddle them, he pushed them as hard as anyone else. What viewers saw on TV was genuine: the work, the tension, and the raw moments when fatherhood collided with leadership. Fans still recall the emotional scene when Phil told Jake, "You need to go to treatment, man. At least you'll have a fighting chance." Over time, Phil became a fan favorite. His blunt humor, grit, and humanity resonated with millions. Lines like, "I feel like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest," or "Now you know why lions eat their young," revealed a man who could laugh in the face of hardship. His boat, too, became iconic, its bold colors turning it into a brand. Fans proudly wore Cornelia Marie hats, shirts, and mugs, and even built model ships. Spotting it in port felt like greeting an old friend. The Cornelia Marie's fame was well-earned. It wasn't just a reality TV star, it was a powerhouse. From the start, it hauled in big catches and proved its worth season after season. The brutal winter of 2005, it ranked among the top boats, driven by Phil's relentless pursuit of success. He pushed harder, chased storms longer, and risked more always, with the Cornelia Marie as both his weapon and his anchor. At 128 feet long, the Cornelia Marie was a giant on the Bering Sea. She could haul nearly 300 tons of crab in a single trip, an advantage that meant fewer journeys back to port and far more time out on the water pulling in heavy pots. For television, the sight of that massive vessel stacked high with crab was unforgettable. But the real story wasn't just about making good TV. It revealed the true grit, skill, and relentless grind of the crew. And at the center of it all stood Captain Phil Harris, a man who was willing to push himself and his crew to extremes. But behind the power and bravado, another story was unfolding. Phil wasn't just larger than life, he was also a man fighting a lifelong battle with addiction. 2 viewers. He was the skipper barking orders from the wheelhouse, but to those close to him, he was also the man with a cigarette always burning between his fingers. The cameras captured it all, the endless chain smoking, the constant pots of coffee, and the Red Bull cans stacked like fuel cells along the side. These habits seemed to fit his rough and ready character, yet they were slowly destroying his health. In 2008, the toll became clear when Phil suffered a pulmonary aneurysm while at sea. It should have been the moment to stop, a turning point that doctors, his crew, and even his own sons begged him to take seriously. But Phil wouldn't quit. He refused to give up the cigarettes, the alcohol, or the stress that came with being captain. 2 years later, in 2010, at just 53 years old, Phil suffered a massive stroke. Addiction. It seemed haunted the Harris family like a curse. On January 29, 2010, while the Cornelia Marie was offloading crab, Phil suddenly collapsed. The crew panicked but moved quickly, calling for help over the radio. EMTs rushed aboard, but St. Paul Island was so remote that the nearest major hospital was hundreds of miles away. After stabilizing him, they arranged for a medevac flight to Anchorage. His sons and crew were left behind on the icy docks, stunned and powerless. Watching their captain and father flown away, fighting for his life, cameras rolled through every frantic radio call, every desperate moment. It raised an uncomfortable question. Should such raw pain and tragedy really be broadcast to the world? Since Phil couldn't give his consent, Discovery turned to the family. Josh and Jake made the choice to allow it, explaining that they wanted the truth shown and their father's struggle honored. Even today, that decision sparks debate. For a brief moment, it looked as if Phil might defy the odds once again. He squeezed hands, cracked jokes, and stunned doctors by recovering in days what most stroke patients needed months to achieve. But hope was short-lived. A sudden brain bleed worsened his condition, and soon there was nothing left but to say goodbye. On February 9, 2010, Captain Phil Harris passed away. His ashes were divided, half placed in a Harley-Davidson gas tank with his mother's remains, and the rest scattered at sea, the place that had always been his true home. When the Deadliest Catch episode Redemption Day aired on July 20th, 5.4 million people tuned in. Viewers wept alongside the Harris family, and the episode became one of the most watched in the show's history. In that moment, Phil was no longer just a captain on television. He had become the very heart of Deadliest Catch. Even years after his death, his legacy lived on. Fans continued to share his quotes online, wear shirts with his sayings, and honor the spirit he left behind. But for his sons, Josh and Jake, the loss of their father was only the beginning of a new and heartbreaking chapter. They were determined to keep the Cornelia Marie in the family, yet ownership was complicated. Other stakeholders still held large shares, and buying them out required more money than the brothers could imagine. On top of that, the boat needed major repairs. They tried to secure loans, but banks and investors didn't believe in them. Too many, Josh and Jake were too young, too inexperienced, and far too risky. Family tensions added to the struggle. Cornelia Marie Devlin, the woman the boat was named after, and Phil's former business partner, owned a big stake. and she didn't always see eye to eye with the Harris brothers. During this time, Cornelia Marie went through some of its most painful days. Derek Ray, an old friend of Phil's, stepped in as interim captain to honor Phil's wish that the boat continue on Deadliest Catch, but his strict leadership style clashed badly with the grieving Harris brothers, especially Jake. At one point, Ray even accused Jake of using drugs on board and called the police in an attempt to scare him straight. The shocking moment left both crew and fans stunned. Morale plummeted, and when crab hauls were poor, the crew came close to mutiny. They blamed Ray's harsh leadership and lack of success at sea, and for a while, Cornelia Marie felt more divided than ever. After years of uphill battles, Josh finally found a way forward. He teamed up with Casey McManus, a childhood friend who had grown into a skilled engineer and deckhand. Together, they raised enough funds to buy back significant shares. Josh acquired 45% of the boat, Casey took 5%, and the remaining 50% was divided between two outside investors. With this deal, they could finally overhaul the Cornelia Marie. They installed new 750 horsepower Cummins engines and carried out other major upgrades. By 2015, Josh and Casey became co-captains, replacing the old engines with 2,758 horsepower Cummins diesels. But owning a boat wasn't just about repairs, it was a constant financial battle. Expenses for wages, fuel, insurance, and maintenance piled up. Josh often described the Cornelia Marie as a black hole for money. Things got even tougher. When the pandemic hit, crew wages skyrocketed to 10 times the usual rate, and every season felt like a gamble one bad catch could mean financial disaster. To survive, they had to take bigger risks, venturing into deeper, deadlier waters in search of golden king crab. Meanwhile, the presence of cameras added another layer of stress. The demands of Deadliest Catch sometimes put safety at odds with entertainment. Filming during storms, delaying trips for the sake of drama, or pushing for risky shots made for gripping television, but it also made fishing more dangerous. At times, Discovery even pulled the Cornelia Marie from the show. It's not for fishing reasons, but due to legal or image issues. While Josh tried to rebuild the boat and his future, Jake's life unraveled. His addiction, already visible before Phil's death, spiraled out of control. Viewers will never forget the episode where Phil confronted Jake for stealing painkillers, and Jake admitted to being an addict. After Phil's passing, things worsened. Jake was arrested for DUI, later for drug possession and car theft in 2017. And by 2019, he was in prison for DUI and attempting to distribute heroin. In 2024, his troubles climaxed when he led police on a high-speed chase, resulting in an 18-month prison sentence. Estranged from Josh and the Cornelia Marie, Jake drifted away from the legacy his father had left. The challenges weren't only personal. In 2016, fans were shocked when the Cornelia Marie and Josh were missing from season 13 of Deadliest Catch. Social media exploded with rumors until Josh explained that producers had chosen to focus on other boats that year. Fans were furious, with many threatening to boycott the show unless the Cornelia Marie returned. Meanwhile, the Harris family faced devastating health crises. In July 2024, Renee Harris suffered a massive heart attack, requiring a double bypass and life support. Her heart stopped 4 times. Other relatives faced strokes, brain bleeds, and emergencies, forcing the family to focus on survival instead of fishing or filming. Fans rallied with support, but heartbreak deepened when Josh's grandfather, Captain Grant Harris, also passed away. The weight of living up to 2 generations of captains left Josh struggling with depression and anxiety. Still, Josh pressed forward, determined to honor both his father and grandfather by keeping the Cornelia Marie's story alive. For the crew of Deadliest Catch, the Harris family became more than just a subject. They became family. The cameramen endured the same brutal storms, the same icy winds, and the same sleepless nights, often sharing meals and chores. When the Cornelia Marie returned in season 14, fans were overjoyed. The boat's absence had left a void, and its comeback felt like restoring a piece of the show's very soul. Ratings soared and fans cheered as Josh and Casey carried on Phil's legacy. In 2020, the Harris story took a surprising twist with the launch of the spinoff Deadliest Catch, Bloodline. The show shifted from Alaska's freezing waters to Hawaii's sunny shores after Josh discovered 50 to 60 old fishing charts hidden in Phil's stateroom, including several marked with mysterious fishing spots in Hawaii. Determined to follow his father's trail, Josh partnered with Casey and local fisherman Jeff Silva. Together, they chased both big fish like ahi tuna worth up to $2,000 each and pieces of Phil's hidden past. But behind the success, leadership on the Cornelia Marie began to shift. Casey McManus increasingly took charge, proving himself a capable and steady leader while Josh's personal and legal troubles mounted. The most devastating blow came in September 2022 when old court documents revealed Josh's dark past. 1998, at just 15 years old. He had sexually assaulted a 4-year-old family friend's daughter. Though DNA delays postponed charges, he eventually pleaded guilty in 1999 to a lesser charge, serving 9 months in jail and 2 years of treatment.
Ow.
For more than 2 decades, this history stayed hidden, but when it resurfaced, the fallout was immediate.